Like something?
We're live. Okay, anybody who's joining us will be starting shortly. We're just waiting for a few more people to join us in the program. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody who's joining us now, please know we will be beginning the program in a couple of minutes. I guess it's Jewish time while we're waiting for people to join us. Hi everyone, our first speaker is planned for 3:10. I'm going to make a short introduction just before and we will go live soon. Okay guys, we're going to start in about 1 minute, so anybody waiting, and we're just admitting people to the Zoom and people connecting to the Facebook Live. Okay, anybody waiting to join us? We're going to be starting in a couple of moments. Okay. Okay. Good afternoon and good morning. Depending where you are in the world, thank you for joining us in our worldwide program for Yom Hazikaron. I'm Jody Samuels, and I am your host today. And I'm going to be sharing with you, Stacy, can someone spotlight me, please? I'm going to be sharing with you this about Yom Hazikaron, the stories of the families. But before that, I just want to tell you a little bit about the organizations that are behind this. I, Jody, started the JIC and JIC Israel, so JIC New York and JIC Israel in 2000, when my husband and I moved to New York City. And within 3 weeks, we realized there was a need for foreign Jews to have a Jewish home away from home. We started with a modest Shabbat dinner, and then we realized we wanted to offer Torah classes. Someone recommended Steve Eisenberg. And since then, Steve's been partnering with JIC and teaching his famous Monday night Torah class, reaching 70, 80, sometimes 100 young professionals every week. JIC started just as a small group, and then we grew and grew. I sort of joke, it's like having triplets, and it was an unexpected blessing. But we now have about 10,000 people come through the door every year. And before COVID, we were running 300 programs live a year. In fact, our programs encompassed young professionals, singles, older singles, couples. And then in 2014, we made true to our promise to move to Israel. It only took us 23 years from the time we got married. But when we moved here, we started the same programming in Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. And now we have hundreds of people in 3 cities. And BC, everything was live. But since COVID, before COVID, and now we pivoted to both an online model as well as having people join us, at least in Israel for now, in live events. In fact, we're very excited that in just about 2 weeks, on the 25th of April, we're having our first heritage trip. We usually do trips all over the world. And we're going to Dubai, Israel's new peace partners. Anybody want to join? That being said, our programs include Shabbat dinners, Torah classes, social events, networking events, cultural events. The goal of JIC is to be a Jewish home away from home, to connect people with their Jewish reality and to inspire people, as well as to connect them to Israel. And likewise in Israel, our mission is to connect young professionals and to help them acclimate to Israel while they are also meeting Israelis and building connections in community. In fact, one of our proudest things is we just celebrated our 131st wedding from our events. We'd love to see all you guys in person, on Zoom, and we would love to host you in Jerusalem for a Shabbat meal, and we'd love to connect with you. Today's program is so much work, and I want to call out Team JIC, and especially Stacy for all her hard work, and to Sari Singer, our partner from Strength to Strength, for making this program a reality. Last year, it was just a few weeks into COVID, and we realized we weren't going to have our regular programming. And we also realized this is an opportunity to reach beyond our local audiences. And I know, as someone who is deeply connected to Israel, Yom Hazikaron was something that was meaningful to me, but I would go to a program in New York City for an hour on the evening and maybe an hour in the day, and then Yom Hazikaron was over. And I felt it hard to connect. So we realized a program like this would create opportunity for people all around the world to connect to these real life stories. And we know that when people share this human experience, that's when they truly feel at one. And to the families and the victims who share their stories and who listen in today, Your stories help us connect to Israel. They help us understand the sacrifice and create awareness of what hate can do, and help us to learn how to be ambassadors for peace. And we just hope that sharing your stories will elevate the neshamas of your deceased and loved ones, and that we can help share in your pain, and hopefully just send you guys virtual hugs from around the world. I can tell you that today I went to Emek Raphaim in my neighborhood, and I was having a coffee, and everything's decorated with flags, and you feel this like sense of like pride, Israel. And then the siren went, and everyone stops, including kids, children, cars. The world stops for a few moments. You have to just think about a society that is so obsessed with remembering and mourning, and yet at the same time, a few hours later, we're going to be celebrating, because that's what we do. We understand the power of what we gave up, but we also understand the miracles we've received. And I just want to thank all the sponsors tonight. We have so many people who promoted this event. Collectively, our Facebook reach is over 100,000 people, as well as all the 24 organizations who partnered with us. So thank you to Aleinu, American Friends of Migdal Or, the Ari Food Foundation, the Base Michael Levine Lode Soldier Center, By Israel, Confederate of United Zionists, David Mandel Org, Ethics in the Field, Fast Pass to Love, Give a Hymn, HonestReporting.com, Holocaust Museum of Tolerance and Education, Israel B, Jeff Seidel's Jewish Student Center, Jewish Journeys, Jody's Voice, K-Space in Miami, Kedma, Karen Melky, the Melky Foundation, Kol HaNeshama, Kosher Travelers, Kerem House, New, Pirkei Hallel, Route 613, Sheikh Hadashin Emek, Santon Shul, Tel Aviv International Synagogue, Reconnection Strips, We Learn, and Westside Sephardic Synagogue. Ladies and gentlemen, we have organizations from Johannesburg to LA to Israel to New York. Thank you for joining us in our program. And with that, we are going to introduce our first speaker. And I'm honored to introduce Cheryl Mandel, someone I've seen so many times on social media. I've seen her live. And I want to share with you a little bit about Cheryl before she tells her story. Cheryl is originally from Toronto, and her husband, Dr. David Mandel, made Aliyah to Israel with 5 young children in 1987. They moved to Alan Shvot in the Gush, and in 2003, their middle son was killed in the IDF while arresting terrorists. There he was, a charismatic young man of just 24, and his life was taken. But his death continues to influence all of us, inspire people. And it was after his death that Cheryl felt the need to speak up about the experiences of being a bereaved mother. So she started speaking to groups on Zionism and the importance of IDF to Jews all around the world, and also a very important talk about overcoming adversity and life in Israel. She gives workshops to women for change and resilience. She loves dance. She runs workshops on dance of coping. And every year, her organization participates in the Jerusalem Marathon to raise money in honor of her son's name. And with that, Cheryl.
Thank you. Everybody can hear me? Am I now speaking? Okay.
You are.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, so I've just been part of an amazing experience here today. I started off by speaking at our local yeshiva, Yeshivat Har Etzion, in a lunch food. And then we were at the ceremony at our cemetery in Har Etzion. It was a military cemetery in honor of Yom Hazikaron, Remembrance Day. And then coming back to the house, various people have been coming throughout the day. First came soldiers that served with Daniel in the army, and then came soldiers that were Daniel's soldiers. They were part of 7th Mandel. And then came their commander. And with their commander, developed a very interesting conversation. And I'm still so caught up in it and so involved in it. But this conversation was about how he felt as a commander, how he took the ultimate responsibility, how during the period that they were soldiers when Daniel was their officer, how there were every single night there were operations, there were terror attacks, and they were busy. And they talked about Daniel. Daniel was killed Yud Gimel Nisan, which was the 15th of April. Interestingly enough, that's tomorrow. Tomorrow's the 15th of April. And that it was Erev Pesach. It was the day before Pesach. And they did this operation. Their commander was killed. They killed a terrorist. They arrested 2 more. And then they were sent home for Pesach. And then, as their commander Goldfuss said, they got back on the horse. They were sent out the very next day. On the few days when they came back to the army after Pesach, they were sent out to do operations again. And Goldfuss said, "I didn't let any psychologist come near my unit." And the soldiers were able to say to him, after 18 years, they talked to him about the sense of security he gave them, how they followed Daniel. Daniel had been with them for 22 months, how they followed Daniel. The expression in Hebrew is anai matzumot. They followed him with closed eyes. Whatever Daniel told them to do, they did. And the sense of security and following your commander is something that is just a gift that these young soldiers had. And now after 18 years, they were able to tell it to Daniel's commander, Dan Goldfuss, who is now a big general. 18 years later, is a big general in the army. Here I am, a Canadian. I come on Aliyah. I have no experience with the army. I have to say that I didn't worry at all. My kids, Daniel was my second soldier. I have Nicole and then Jonah and then Daniel. Daniel was my second soldier in the army. He was in his 5th year. Gabriel had just gone into the army. I wasn't worried. I slept well at night. And then we got the knock on the door. And I go to the door and I open it up, and there's these 3 big soldiers there. And they walk me into the kitchen, walk me and my husband David into the kitchen. They sit us down and they say, "Are you the parents of?" And from that moment, when they said, "Are you the parents of Lieutenant Daniel Yaakov Mandel?" He was killed this morning in Shem, in Nablus, in a battle with terrorists. And from that moment on, your life is changed. And you know what? You have to make a decision. You have to make a decision. What I like to tell young people is that you can't control what happens to you. You can only control how you respond to it. And we decided to take the pain of our loss and to use it to go forward and to do good things in this world, in Daniel's memory, in Daniel's zchut. And this is what we've been trying. To do. I do a lot of speaking about Daniel because the main thing, if you speak to somebody, if you know somebody who has lost a loved family member, who has lost a child, what they want is they don't want that person to be forgotten. And I figure if I'm not willing to make an effort that my son Daniel will be remembered, then how can I expect anybody else to? Behind me on the wall, you'll see a picture of Daniel. And this picture is not just of Daniel. This picture is composed of tiny, 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 tiny little pictures of all the children that are called in Daniel's memory. Daniel was 24 when he was killed. He didn't have a wife. He didn't have any children. And now there were at least 18 young Daniels, boys and girls. It's for some it's their first name, for some it's their second name, for some they're my grandchildren, for some they're children of good friends of Daniel's. Um, they're all called after our son Daniel. How do you cope? How do you go on? Well, I want to tell you that Daniel was killed there Pesach. We came home from the funeral and did Bidikat Chametz. The next morning we woke up and we sat Shiva for 4 hours. And then the rabbi came 12 o'clock and he said, it's the end of the Shiva. And I started to cry. And he said, okay, you can sit for 1 more hour. And so we, how do you go on? How do you go on? This is a story that two women friends, both of them bereaved mothers, this is a story that they told me, and it's become my story. I've changed it, and I love the story. And this is one of the things that helped me to go on. There was a woman, and her son was killed. And she cried day and night, and she cried week after week, and she cried month after month, and she could not pull herself together. And one night she has a dream. And in this dream, she goes down this long, dark corridor. And at the end of the corridor, there's a door. She goes to the door, she opens the door, and she's in a banquet hall. And in this banquet hall, it's full of beautiful young men and women. And there's a light in the room, and there's laughing, and there's singing, and there's talking. There's even learning Torah. And they're all sitting around and they're having a great time, beautiful young boys and girls. And then in the corner, she spies her son and she runs to him. She's so happy to see him. She throws her arms around him and she hugs him and kisses him and hugs him and kisses him and hugs him. And she cannot stop hugging him and kissing him. And then she says, wait a minute. Why are you sitting here all by yourself? Why are you alone in the corner? Why are you so sad? And he looks at her and he says, Ima, mommy. He says, Ima, how can I be happy when you're so sad? Now, I truly know in my heart of hearts that Daniel doesn't want me to be sad. And I truly know in my heart of hearts that Daniel doesn't want me to going around the world and in Zooms talking about him. But you know what? He can't have everything. Daniel was a very, very successful commander. He was very admired by his peers, loved by his soldiers, and he was definitely a non-traditional officer that took his soldiers all over the country and had them paint houses for different organizations, and he wanted them to know the country and to know what they were defending. For me, a very, very influential trip in my life was going to Poland. And was understanding. First of all, they talk about 6 million Jews, and they also talk about 55 million people were killed during the Second World War. And it just put into perspective my son, my one loss. And it put into perspective also because what I learned there is the importance of having Eretz Israel, importance of us having a country that during the Shoah, during the Holocaust, it didn't matter how gorgeous you were or how smart you were or how rich you were. If you were Jewish and you lived in the wrong town, you were dead. If you were Jewish and you went out of your house at the wrong time of day or night, you were dead. And for us here living in Eretz Israel, it's a privilege. It's a privilege that was denied to Jews for over 2,000 years. And with that privilege comes a responsibility, the responsibility of defending our homeland. And with that responsibility comes a small amount of danger. What I like to say is that I'm the same age as the state of Israel. And for those of you who are good at math, you know that means I'm 73. And so for the short period of time, you can think of me as Mother Israel. And as Mother Israel, I want you to know that I love my children just as much as you love yours. And I send them to fight. I send them to defend the state of Israel, and not all of them return. But I believe that it is so important. This is a privilege that has been given to us, and we must take care of it. We must use it. My husband David says it's very important that we view today Yom Hazikaron not as a Yom Evel, not as a sad day, that Daniel and all the almost 24,000 soldiers, they were killed on Kiddush Hashem. They were killed on Kiddush Hashem. And this is a day when we think of them and we are with them. And this is a wonderful day when all of Am Yisrael is together with the families and is thinking about our children. And we are so lucky. I'm going to tell you a little story. I'm not quite sure how much time I have left, but I'm gonna tell you a little story. Daniel was a Katzin, was an officer in a unit called the Palsar Nachal. If there aren't too many soldiers listening, then I can get away with saying it's the best unit in the army. And Daniel's training was long and hard. It was 18 months long. And at the end of this 18-month training, they become battle soldiers. Now, what do you think they do to mark the end of this training, mark the end of this 18-month training? They go on a 90-kilometer trek. For those of you who don't know kilometers, it's approximately 60 miles. It takes them about 12 hours. And on this trek, they're carrying all their equipment. They're carrying their gun, they're carrying their water, they're carrying their bullets. And a lot of the soldiers have an extra responsibility. So the one in charge of first aid is carrying the medical kit. And the one in charge of communication, he's carrying the radio. And they take the big, strong guy, and him, they give the machine gun, because the machine gun weighs another 8 to 10 kilos, 15 to 20 pounds. Now, for those of you who know young children, pick up a 1-year-old, she's maybe 15 pounds, and put her on your hip and try carrying her for 12 hours. It's really hard, and it takes a very, very strong person to do it. Well, Daniel, the soldiers that Sevet Amit is setting off. They're so excited to finally be finishing their training and that they're going to be battle soldiers. And they head off, and they head off with singing, and they're happy and marching, marching, marching. And boom, the guy carrying the machine gun collapsed. So Daniel, being a well-brought-up Canadian, goes to his friend, puts out his hand, and his officer comes up to him and says, Mendel, kach et mag. Daniel, take the machine gun. Well, Daniel wasn't a particularly big or strong guy, and he hadn't prepared for 18 months to carry the machine gun, and certainly not to carry the machine gun for 12 hours. But his officer said, Daniel, take the machine gun. Mendel, kach et mag. And so Daniel picked up this burden of the machine gun, and he set off, and he walked 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 and he walked. Daniel succeeded in carrying the machine gun for 90 kilometers. Then he collapsed. He was homesick for a week, but he did it. And why did he do it? He did it because his officer said, Mendel, kach et hamag. What I say that I too am on a trek, and my trek is called life. And suddenly, in the middle of my trek, my commanding officer said, Mendel, kach et hamag. Cheryl, take this burden. I said, no, why me? I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. But my commanding officer said, just like Daniel's, Mendel, kach et hamag. So like Daniel, I picked up this burden of being a bereaved mother. I'm going to carry it until the end of my days. I'm trying to do it with as much love and respect as I can. And I'm doing it not just for Daniel, but I'm doing it for all of Am Yisrael and for all of the Jews outside of Israel too. I believe that maybe we have a few minutes for questions. Jody, Sari,
Yes.
does anyone want to ask questions?
Yes, I would love to ask you some questions. So we really appreciate this honest talk, and I'm curious to know, is it harder for you to talk on Yom Zikaron than other times when you speak? Is this day like a more emotional day for you?
The whole period from Daniel's Askara, which is Erev Pesach, until after Yom Hazikaron is an incredibly difficult time. We group of bereaved mothers, we have something we call ascaratitis, and it comes on you without you knowing before the askara, and you just go down. And for me, because the two are so close in time, they're about 2.5 weeks apart, so I just go down. It's hard. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard. People who know me, I dance in all the women's performances, and I give workshops, and I do a lot of things. And I'm basically, I would say, a very positive, happy person. And this month, I just go, oh, ein malasat, okay.
It's probably, I guess, somewhat healthy to experience the pain and feel it sometimes, than always be the strong one. And perhaps maybe this time is the time that you feel it in a more, in a supportive environment, rather than sort of going out to speak to the world and being the face of a bereaved mother. Now you are the bereaved mother.
I have to say that I much prefer to be overseas, because what you'll find that most of members of bereaved families will tell you is that Yom HaZikaron is for Eretz Israel, it's for the it's not for the families. And so when I am overseas and I am speaking to people overseas, because I could be your next door neighbor, I'm just like the lady down the block, a little bit crazier, but I'm like the lady, who lives in your neighborhood. And I feel if I can, I feel I have a ability for a few minutes to touch people, to get them to understand the importance of living in the state of Israel. That is so important. What it means to be Israeli, what it means to lose a child, and how dear this is to us. I have heads of yeshivot and midrashot going like, oh, the good thing about Corona is that Cheryl's in Israel. She'll speak to us Yom HaZikaron, but I much prefer to be overseas.
Yeah, there's nothing like that personal connection, no question. And a question, when this all happened, did you and your husband see this tragedy and reality through the same lens, or did it take you a while to get on the same page about it? Because so often you hear the challenge of bereaved families that it's sometimes difficult for the husband and wife to see the world in the same way.
That's an interesting question. So I've been married over 52 years,
Oh.
and we have never seen the world the same way.
Mm.
And what I love to say, or what is so true, is that we're a family that we were both secular when we got married, and my husband became deeply, deeply religious. And through his faith, through his deep, deep, deep emunah, that he was able to give me, give our children, give the soldiers, give Daniel's friends, his friends from Atzmona, his friends from the Yishuv, to give us such, he was just so deep in his emunah. And he would say, it doesn't matter if you can see it. It doesn't matter if you believe it. There is a plan. And so we just all took a deep breath, and we figuratively held on to the coattails of David, of my husband. And it's just been, what I said is that I feel as if I married him just in order to go through that experience together with him. It was amazing.
That's really amazing, because it could have been so much harder. Did you ever have those moments when you just woke up and you were angry at God and said, or did you always see perspective because it was defined by your religious values and your Zionistic, influence? Or
I don't know if I'm going to surprise or disappoint your listeners, but so 1967 for me was about dancing at Expo in Montreal. I didn't know anything about Eretz Israel, so I wasn't at all Zioni. Religion, I have pictures of myself sitting on Santa's knee, but it was more the sense of if I felt, if I knew, if I thought if I cried day and night, it would bring my son back, then I would do it. But I didn't believe it. What somebody explained to me, I always find it so interesting. Like a lot of my friends, the young rabbaniyot from Alon Shvut, they look at me and they say, Cheryl, you have such deep, deep emunah. And I look at them and I go like, huh, me, practical Cheryl? But when I was in Australia, what a rabbi explained to me, he says, Cheryl, your emunah is like your arm. It's just part of you. And so I don't know. I don't know. But when speaking of my arm, how I explain what it is to be bereaved is that it's as if your arm is gone. You'd adjust to having one arm. You'd learn how to live with one arm. You'd function with just one arm, but there wouldn't be one single day that went by when you didn't miss that arm and wish you had that arm still with you.
Wow, what an incredible way of explaining that. And I hear that as a very clear message, and I hope that your clarity can give other people clarity. And, we can just send you a virtual hug and tell you that we, the people of Israel, are thinking about each one of you families. And we so appreciate you sharing the message, because when we have these I wish it was in person, but when we hear from the people, we really hear their stories and we just feel so much more part of the Jewish people in a crazy way. You wouldn't think that pain makes us feel more part of it, but there is like that moment of, I want to cry while I listen, and I'm so proud to be Israeli when I hear your story. So thank you. You're making me all choked up. Okay. And we're going to move to our next speaker. So thank you for your time. And ladies and gentlemen, please, please share this. We have so much powerful content that we can share with people who aren't on the talk right now, who may not be in Israel, who may not connect in the same way. And it's shared live on Facebook. We will also send out recordings and email. And the more you can share this, the more we can elevate the neshamot of those people whose lives are lost and be Israel and celebrate the fact that we're all here. So it's JIC NY on Facebook and JIC Israel on Facebook. And please, please share with that. And all the last night's program, which was also incredible, is also on Facebook Live, and all the recordings are available should you want them. Last night we had 2 soldiers speak who had survived terror attacks, and we had survivors themselves of bombings. And now we're going to go to our next speaker, Arnold Roth. And it's just so unimaginable that we're going from one parent who lost a child to another parent who lost a child. And Arnold was a lawyer for 3 decades in Australia, the US, and Israel before taking on senior management roles in Israel Ventures. His wife, Frimit, who's originally from New York, and they've both lived in Jerusalem since 1988, raising Israeli children and our grandchildren. But since the murder in a Hamas terrorist attack of their daughter Melki, who was just 15, guys, she was just 15, they've been speaking widely and raising awareness on the fundamental challenges facing the government and political leaders in dealing with the challenges of terror. This part to me is so crazy. Melki's murderer, a Hamas agent, lives today freely in Jordan as an acclaimed icon and celebrity. She's also one of the 2 females on the FBI's most wanted list. And since 2017, the Roths have been on a campaign for Jordan to extradite this terrorist so she can face the charges in Washington. But to this date, it's still an ongoing effort. In honor of Karen Melki, the Melki Foundation was established in 2001 in memory of Melki to empower families of children with disabilities in Israel. And with that, I'm going to ask Arnold to please talk.
Thank you very much, Jody, and thank you very much to everybody who's here. And thank you to those who are going to watch this, because there's a certain voting with your feet that you do when you tune into what is inevitably a fraught kind of dialogue that we're all part of at the moment. So in the spirit of that dialogue, allow me to throw out a few ideas, since we're not sitting together at a table with drinks in front of us and the ability to relax and open up. What we're doing is using time as efficiently as we can to stake out some turf in the ideological sense, try to establish what it is that we're doing here, and see how all of that interacts with everybody else. I've never met Cheryl, and I hope that we will meet. And I say in the nicest possible way that there's no reason on earth for Cheryl to think like me, or for me to think like Cheryl, in the same way that there's no reason for me to think like my wife or my children, or that they should think like me. Does that mean that I don't have strong ideas, and that I wish everybody would line up in exactly the same way as I've lined up on these ideas? Sure, I'd love to see that happen, because I arrive at my ideas because I think they're essentially right. But really, at the end of the day, it's not that they're right, it's that they're right for me. I'm a child of the Melbourne Jewish community, where I was born in 1952. And everybody that I grew up with, almost almost literally everybody that I grew up with among my Jewish friends, it's a small community, was the child of Holocaust survivors. My sense is that Melbourne is probably the most impacted Jewish community in the world in terms of the Holocaust experience. As I say, everybody that I knew had no grandparents, had no extended family, had no photographs of anything before 1945, and so on. And some of those dimensions are serious and some of them are sort of just conversational, but they all end up saying something about a person's outlook on life. My outlook on life was fashioned by the very practical focus of my parents, who came to Melbourne, came to Australia as refugees in 1949, a country that had closed its doors to the Jews who wanted to get there earlier, looking to make the best life they could for their children, which was really a reflection of their own desire to have the best life that they could make for themselves, which is why they and practically every other survivor of the Holocaust that I've ever met, my parents' generation, of course, I mean, got married in the space of 2 or 3 years, starting in 1946, and then quickly got out of Germany and started building lives elsewhere. Of course, I'm generalizing, and the reason for my generalizing is because I'm going to extend those generalizations into some of the things that I've acquired by way of insights over these last almost 20 years since my daughter was blown to pieces in a terrorist attack. But I start with the proposition that we all end up being the sum total of our own existence, our own experience, and there's no reason for us to think that we all think the same way. At the same time, before I leave this philosophical kind of bent, there's no reason to ever think of anyone mourning too much or not mourning enough or not mourning in the right way or failing to comply with some mourning standard. It's a serious comment I just made because over the years, I've encountered lots and lots of people, some of them in the business of fixing broken souls, people who maybe as a living consult to those of us who've had very difficult experiences, and in a more subtle sense, Jewish leadership. There is a lot that I want to say about Jewish leadership, and in the space of the 3.5 hours that the organizers of this lovely event have promised me that I can talk here, but of course I haven't been promised that bracket of time, so I'm going to be very brief about it. In addition to being the child of the Melbourne Jewish community and parents who survived the Holocaust with really nothing, having lost everything, I'm also the father of 7 children, of whom 6 are alive today. My wife and I came to Israel, as Jody said in the introduction, in 1988, but the genesis of that is that when I met my wife in 1975, I was in New York City as a student catching up on my Jewish education after finishing law school, and I took myself off to Yeshiva University to go into the kindergarten there, and had the most phenomenal growth experience until I met this gorgeous New York girl who on our very first date said, "So what's your plan for Aliyah?" There were other surprises of that nature that I encountered pretty quickly, but that's the one that I choose to mention because Frimit was always very focused on wanting to live her life with the right person and having produced children, which we really both dreamed of, in Israel. And I answered her in a clever kind of way, as men do. I said, yes, but I need 7 years to cash in on my training as a lawyer. So after 12 years, I kept my 7-year promise, and we arrived in Israel, in Jerusalem, where we'd always intended to be, in 1988, having got married in 1976. By then, we had three boys, all born in Melbourne, and Malki. Malki was just a little over 2 years old. She never left Israel after she arrived here. And as much as I want to spend all of my time talking to you about Malki, about my feelings for Malki, about what a wonderful person Malki was and what an unbearable loss it is to the world that Malki isn't here anymore, I won't. I just want to say that Malki was a sweetheart. She was the most optimistic, empathetic person I've ever met. And her life was cut short, as you've already figured out by doing the sums, She was born in 1985 and she was murdered in 2001, before she got to 16. She and her best friend were standing at the counter of the Sabara Pizzeria on a hot school holiday afternoon, around 2 o'clock that afternoon, when a walking bomb, about whom the police knew and had given no warnings to the public, walked in, having been brought there by a woman who was all of 21 years old, a newsreader on one of the Palestinian Arab TV stations, and a woman who was a Jordanian who had transplanted herself to the West Bank, the occupied territories, Judea and Samaria. You know the area I'm talking about, only a year or two earlier. The woman had already planted a bomb 9 days earlier in the center of Jerusalem. And though she describes it as a smashing success with enormous losses to the Zionists, that's all rubbish. She brought an exploding beer can and placed it in the supermarket that used to be in the basement of what used to be called Hamash Bir Letzarchan on King George. Today it's an office building as well as some street level shops. But at the time it was one of the few department stores in this country, and it had a supermarket below street level, and the supermarket sold beer, and she knew that Israelis like beer, and she would bring a can of beer and no one would stop her. And she left it there, but it didn't go off, or it went off and it didn't do any damage. So infuriated by this, she went back to her handlers in Hamas. She was the first woman ever to be admitted into the ranks of Hamas, and said, I need a much bigger bomb, and I need it now, and I'm going to show you the way this ought to be done. And on the 9th of August, 2001, a Thursday afternoon in the middle of the school holidays, very hot day, she came by bus together with a human bomb, a young man who was a religious zealot, not for very long. His parents had no real sense of just how indoctrinated he had become. He was also in his 20s, with a guitar case on his back. The guitar case I could spend the next hour talking about, because it was funded and constructed and initiated by a number of different people, one of whom is now being said to be a serious candidate for president of the Palestinian Authority, and has been nominated by Bishop Desmond Tutu, one of the few theologians in the world whom I despise, as a Nobel Prize winning leader. At least Tutu, who has the Nobel Prize, wants Marwan Barghouti to get a Nobel Prize as well. It's a despicable construct. In any event, Marwan Barghouti was one of the people who put the money down for the construction of that hideous exploding guitar case, which was on the back of this young man whose name translates into the Egyptian. He was standing at the counter next to Malki and her best friend, Michal Raziel, when the woman brought him there and told him, give me 10 minutes so that I can get away from here, because I have no intention of dying here today. And she was already on a bus heading back to Ramallah when the entire building blew up. And not only the people inside, most of them, but people outside on the street were either maimed, or in the case of 15 of them, murdered. And for those of you who don't know all of the details of this very difficult experience that the Jewish people went through, there's a 16th victim as well, an American woman, a woman with American citizenship, who has been unconscious for the entire 19 and a half years since then, having brought a toddler with her into the pizzeria. And then, though I don't have contact with the toddler, I do know her father, and I've spoken with the parents of this young woman. And I know that the life that they have had since the massacre is something none of us can imagine. And that causes me to pause for a moment and just say something about what I just said about the other victims, and also about my parents, and also about Melbourne, and also about what it's like to be part of this community of people who have suffered terrorism at first hand. Our experiences are all different. We don't all want to be thought of as victims. We don't all want to be left alone to get on with life. We don't all hate the Arabs. We don't all love the Arabs. We don't all anything. It's a community as variegated and heterogeneous as the society in which you live and I live. There's no reason to expect it to be any different. And please never judge any of the victims of terrorism according to some standard, whether it's articulated or whether it's just implied, as having failed to live up to a person's expectations. Now let me put that point aside and move forward to what I really need to convey to an audience like this. Ahlam Tamimi, that's her name, was found very quickly after the massacre took place. She didn't admit that she was the bomber when she read the news that night. I've got a video clip of her reading the news, talking about the resistance operation in Al-Quds in which Zionists were killed. It's despicable. Many aspects of the story are despicable. And of course, when I say despicable, I'm protecting myself from using the kind of language that I would use if any of you would sit with me at a table with some drinks in front of us, because I need to explode with my language sometimes, simply in order to get things out of my head and out into the open where they can do less harm. She was arrested, put on trial, admitted to all of the charges, enraged the 3-judge panel by smiling at them the whole time. And then at the traditional invitation to address the court before sentence, she spoke about her smile, about how she was going to be released, that whatever they did to her, in the end, she would be the one who laughs last, and brought the judges to the point where they said, for the protocol, you can go look for the protocol. You won't find it. I think I'm the only person anywhere who got a hold of the protocol and then published it on my own blog. And it's really worth reading. For the protocol, the judges said this woman should never be released in any political deal. She should never be given parole. This woman is a monster. On the occasion of the Shalit deal in October 2011, she walked free. She was one of 1,027 Palestinian Arab convicted terrorist prisoners who were the ransom that Israel paid for the release of Gilad Shalit. My wife and I were very careful not to campaign against the deal itself, though we thought it was a catastrophe, and we said so in many places at the time. We were among the less than 10% of Israelis who were opposed to the deal, a deal which in Hebrew deserves the title B'chia Ledorot. It is a cause for weeping for generations to come. It's a subject that I would be happy to talk about at much greater length, but obviously not now. We did, however, campaign, and very energetically, to call on the government of Israel to not include this woman in the Go Free list. You've got 1,027 people. No one can make the argument that this person who represents less than 1/10 of 1% of the price that Israel is paying for the release of Gilad Shalit and the return of him to Israeli society, that her being excluded from the list could do any harm. It's a nonsense. But nonetheless, we were singularly unsuccessful, even after sending 3 personal letters delivered into the hand of the then Prime Minister. He's actually the current Prime Minister as well. We never got a response. We've never had any response from the Prime Minister to any of the things that we've done in all the years, even though the Prime Minister was in fact in Melbourne, Australia, where I was born, where my daughter Malki was born, on the day that Malki was murdered, and was surrounded by Australian journalists. And I'm not going to say what he said to them, but you'll find that written in some of the things that I've said along the way. Tamimi went to Jordan, which is where she came from. And the next important moment that constitutes a decision point in my life was when in February 2012, so we're talking perhaps 8 weeks after her life was handed back to her and she arrived in Jordan as an absolute celebrity to a raucous reception at Queen Alia Airport in Amman, the Jordanian capital, she was given a TV show. This will probably kind of go over the heads of many of the faces that I'm looking at here now in this audience, but the TV show was on one of the Hamas global satellite networks, meaning that the TV show was beamed to every country on earth where there are Arabic speakers, which is practically everywhere. And she attracted a huge audience over the following, are you ready for this? 5 years. Every weekend for 5 years, a program devoted only to the glorification of terrorism and of the people who do it. Jordan is not a free country, my friends. Jordan is a country where the media is very tightly controlled. It's a country where speaking out against what may be the current policy of the people who own Jordan is answered by imprisonment and by a visit from the police. She was never stopped. No words of criticism, no restrictions were ever applied to her in all those 5 years. A message of pure poison, a toxic tribute to the utility and the transcendental nature of terrorism in the hands of Arabs directed at Jews. Never attracted a single word of criticism, even though it was produced in downtown Amman every weekend for 5 years. I could stop talking at this point because really that is probably the most salient and impactful thing I could possibly say. Unfortunately, there's a lot more to say, and I'm going to be very brief in simply planting some ideas in your consciousness because things need to be done. When I saw that she was getting a TV program, I did what anybody would do, and I got on a plane to Washington after discussing it with Frimet, and we were on the same page on this as we are on almost every other issue. And I went armed with a fabulous lawyer who is still part of our lives today, just a wonderful man, to the Department of Justice. We met there with a group of perhaps 20 senior managers from both the DOJ and the FBI. And the presentation that I made there was somewhat emotional, but mostly rational and calm. And I made the following key points. The woman who murdered my child, who was an American citizen because of her mother's Americanness, all of our children have American citizenship, and took the life of another American woman who was her parents' only child, pregnant with her own first baby, a tourist. The two women who were murdered, the two Americans, constitute the hook on which an American law that I'd only just learned about applies. And that American law says that if there's an act of terrorism that takes place outside of the territorial United States and involves a weapon of mass destruction and produces dead American nationals, then the United States takes upon itself, I think uniquely in the world, the privilege and the responsibility of going after the terrorist, having that terrorist brought back to the United States and tried in an American court under American law, and if found guilty, sentenced to prison in the United States. And I turned to the people in the audience and I said about as emphatically as I could, and more emphatically than I'm going to do now, looking at all of my friends here on the screen, I said to them, and as you know, there's never been a case in which any American murdered in Israel has attracted the operation of that law, even though the law clearly applies. And I'm calling on you to make that law work in our case. And the responses were positive. As we left the hall, a number of the participants said words to the effect of, if we can get her, we will, but we can't tell you anything, and we won't be able to tell you anything until we can tell you everything. And I've mentioned many times in talking with friends that I came home and told Frimet, my wife, we're in for a tough few weeks, maybe some months, because the Americans are going to do this and they're not going to keep us in the picture. And we just have to wait patiently until they have the indictment and they are on the trail of this awful, hideous, barbarian savage. It was 5 years of total silence from the Americans until March 2017, when we got a phone call from Washington, please be ready for a meeting with us in a hotel in Jerusalem. We've got some things to discuss with you. And we sat in due course with a delegation from the Department of Justice and the FBI, and we were told that in 3 hours from now, this was back in March the 14th, 2017, we're going to announce in Washington that there are charges being unsealed. I'd never run into that word in my own personal practice. I'm a lawyer, but never had anything to do with criminal law. The charges being unsealed, and there's going to be a press conference or a press announcement. Well, what turned out to be the case is that after I and my wonderful friend, my legal colleague, who's been indispensable to this process, went to see the DOJ and the FBI, the process got underway. A judge then sat on the material and issued an arrest warrant. That was in the middle of 2013. In 2017, we're told that all of this had happened and it was all under seal, and now it's being unsealed, and that she's being added to the FBI most wanted terrorists list, which is a real thing. She's only the second woman ever to be added to that list, and there are only 27 people on the list. We're not talking here about hundreds or thousands. And that there's an arrest order, and that the United States is asking the Jordanians to extradite her, which is not a big surprise because Jordan and the United States have had an extradition treaty since the middle of 1995. King Hussein, the father of the current king, and President Bill Clinton and their respective administrations entered into an extradition treaty, which was a big deal at the time, and that treaty had been in existence for all of that period. 7 days after the meeting with those American law enforcement people in Jerusalem, we were stunned to discover that the Jordanian Court of Cassation, its highest appeals court, had just given a ruling that said, in the case of Ahlam Tamimi, the extradition treaty is hereby found to be invalid, and therefore Jordan will not be extraditing her. And do you know what the government of Jordan did after getting that ruling? Do you know what the king of Jordan did, what the prime minister of Jordan did? All the words that were said in the wake of that ruling, zero, nothing. And until today, no one from the Jordanian government has ever said a word, but everybody has been given to understand that the Jordanian court has ruled, and if having ruled, and we're a law-abiding country, we can't possibly hand her over. And I'm here to say to you, ladies and gentlemen, that the entire argument of the Jordanians is nonsense. It's untrue. And at some point, we're going to demonstrate how untrue it is. But that doesn't help us in today's presentation. This is Yom Hazikaron, and we're here to remember. But we're also here to talk about justice. In the 4 years since the handing down of the unsealing of the American charges and then the handing down of the Jordanian ruling, we've made every effort to try to penetrate the American political scene, speaking to people on the executive side, that is in the White House, in the State Department, and the Department of Justice. We've tried to talk to people who are lawmakers in the Congress, people who are Democrats, people who are Republicans. There's no, from our point of view, no political dimension to any of this. This is all about justice, only justice. Americans were murdered. American law says this happens and that happens, and there's an extradition treaty. The path forward is absolutely clear. Why are we not on that path? And before I finish, I want to also say that part of what we've had to do has also involved talking to Jewish organizations, some of the most important Jewish organizations in the United States. And while we do have the support of a considerable number of those organizations, and we've made a press release about that last June of 2020, the fact is that we've also been rejected by numerous Jewish organizations who never say why they want to reject, although it's pretty clear once you get into the understanding what their orientation is. But in more than a handful of cases, and I'm a persistent person, we've got nothing but silence. I cannot contemplate American Jewish leadership that stays silent and impassive in the face of a case which is 100% justice concerning the murder of, they don't have to know that she was a beautiful soul and a wonderful person and her loss was heartbreaking to us. They only need to know that she was an American citizen who was Jewish, who was murdered because she was Jewish by somebody from a country that has an extradition treaty with the United States. It seems to me that all of my lectures and all of my public speaking and all of my tweets and all of my blogs could end with just that statement. And yet, there is not a small number of those major Jewish organizations, many of which solicit you for funding at various moments, who have said, that's what they say. And then there are those who say, sorry, we don't want to be part of this. The current situation that we have is that the woman has just been taken off OFF, the Interpol Red Notice list, which up until now served to warn any country to which she might turn arriving at their airports. The red notice would say, don't let this woman in, call the police. That's what the Interpol Red Notice does. She's now off it. She's been off it since the first week of March. The Jordanian government has been in the news lately. You might have noticed that the king and his half-brother have had what looks like a fairly serious disagreement about the way the world ought to work. It's been called a coup. It's not a coup, but it's clearly something that has played to the idea that Jordan is an unstable country. Well, Jordan may be an unstable country, but it receives $1.8 billion a year, which I don't pay for, but most of you do. And we've actually succeeded twice in the last 18 months, twice, once in December 2019 and once in December 2020, to have a law passed by the Congress on a non-partisan basis that says that if a country has a treaty with the United States that it breaches, and if that country also receives foreign aid from the United States, then that foreign aid stops. The foreign aid hasn't stopped. There's a lot of questions, and that's what keeps my wife and I going. We do a lot of writing and a lot of speaking. We look for every opportunity. If you belong to a synagogue or a church or a golf club, I want you to know that any hour of the day, my wife or I will be happy to talk so that we can create some awareness, because, and this is really the last point I want to make before I talk about my daughter again for a brief moment, the mainstream media do not give any coverage, not to the fact that Jordan is in breach, not to the fact that the murderer is living there free, having had a terrific career, is a celebrity, not to the fact that her support in Jordan is wall to wall. I have never yet seen a single published item emanating from Jordan that says what a disgrace it is to all of us that we are standing behind this monster. Never happened. In order to stay sane, and we all have our own ways to do this, my wife and I have been involved for now almost 20 years in the running of an organization called the Malki Foundation. We're honorary, which means we don't take a penny. We try to help raise money, but it's the work of the Malki Foundation is terrific because it helps families who have exactly what we have at home, a very disabled child whom we will not allow anyone else to raise because no one is going to do the job that we can do, but we need help. At least we did need help. We've worked our own problems out more or less, but there are thousands of families in this country who get rejected by the authorities in this country because of bad policies about disability. There's too much emphasis in this country on putting children like that into institutions. And for those of us who think that institutions can never do the job that a family can at home, the Malki Foundation provides equipment and funds therapies, not medical therapies, but non-medical therapies, speech therapy, physiotherapy, horse riding therapy, water therapy, and I'm forgetting something, 5 therapies. That's what we do to stay sane. The work, the chesed that's done in Malki's name, she was a princess of chesed, is exemplary in my opinion, and really enables us to say with our hands on our hearts that the life of Malki is not going to be forgotten, not as long as we're able to keep talking about it, not as long as the Malki Foundation continues to advertise her life by the simple good that it does on a totally non-sectarian, non-political basis here in Israel. Thank you very much.
Okay, Arnold, and I can only say thank you for sharing. I just need a bit, okay. Thank you for sharing your story, because I'm sure as many times and as articulately as you say it, it's still your story, and there's, you know, she's still your daughter you lost. I'm guessing sort of your professional experience helped you be out there and be such an articulate advocate for your daughter. I'm wondering if you believe in your day you'll ever see the needle truly moved, or after all these years of fighting and all the political ramblings and the backwards and forward, do you think that you're raising awareness to the Jewish communities, maybe to other communities, but do you think this will actually change in your day? Oh, you're muted. Hold on.
Yes.
Okay, now we can hear.
That's the answer. Yes, we will certainly win. And though it's going to take time, justice is going to prevail. There's no other way to look at this.
Okay. And I would love to have a discussion with you on so many things, because there's so many questions you raised for me. And I also have a daughter with a disability. And for me, moving to Israel has definitely been a challenge, navigating the system. And I'm a very passionate advocate for that. So I'd love to connect with you. I'm just going to ask you.
We need to talk.
And I'm also have an Australian citizenship with the South African passport. But separate to that, I want to just ask you one more question because we're short on time. And I just want to ask you how it impacted her siblings when she passed. Like, we always hear about the impact on the parents, but how was the impact on the siblings?
You're a parent, so you won't be astounded when I say that our children are different from each other. We've had every kind of response from total stoicism through to post-traumatic stress disorder in a serious way. Each child has required to be dealt with as an individual, and of course has grown up to carry the burden forward as an individual. It's the same right across the community of people who have experienced terror through their own flesh or in their families, and no one should be surprised by that. I can only say, though, that all of us share this deep, impossibly sad sense of what a shame Malki isn't with us. She was so full of life, so positive, such a gift to the world, and the casualness with which her life was first of all destroyed and then demeaned by the machinations of idiot politicians. I'm sorry, I shouldn't use that expression, but by politicians who don't have enough sense to know how to deal with issues like this. That really enrages all of us, I think.
Okay. And I will look forward to connecting to you separately and finding out more about your organization. And for all of you who'd like to, you can also check out the Malki Roth Foundation. But for now, we're going to go to our next speaker. And I just want to remind everyone that this is streamed on Facebook Live. We would love everybody to share this. I think there's so many messages today. We can't even imagine the pain, the grief, but there's also the messages of strength, the messages of advocacy, the messages of political awareness, and please share this message widely. With that, our next speaker is Rina Ariel. And it's very hard for me to imagine that I'm yet again introducing another parent who lost a child so young. Rina lost her daughter, Hallel, who was stabbed to death in her bed in Kiryat Arba on June 30th, 2016. She was on summer vacation. She had just finished 8th grade. She was a member of a dance troupe and had just performed in Jerusalem the night before. Rina and her husband founded Karen Hallel in their daughter's memory. And Rina spent a lot of time speaking about her daughter and what happened. And in fact, wrote a book for bat mitzvah age girls to study the book with their mother in Hallel's memory. In fact, I went to a program for my daughter whose bat mitzvah was last year, and Rina spoke and we bought the book. And Rina, you should know that is what we studied every day so that she learned from the book as a source guide for her bat mitzvah. So thank you for making that resource available. And I hope it gives many young girls inspiration. And we look forward to hearing your story, not because I'm sure it's going to be enjoyable, but we want to understand what it means to be a parent in Israel and to lose a child. Thank you, Rina.
Okay, so thanks for inviting me. I think for us it's very hard because it's almost 4:30 in the afternoon, and most of the Independent Day has passed. So we've been in a ceremony and we've been standing and talking and meeting, and whoa, what a day. But I feel it's a mission for us to share, because when you chose to listen to us, not only to me, to all the parents that are speaking, you're saying something very, very big. You're saying it's our story. It's a Jewish nation story. It's not only my private story. So I may be a little bit hoarse and I may be a little bit tired, but I think we have something very big going on. And I hope after I speak and everybody else speaks, you could a bit understand and take something that could be done. Because for us, the Memorial Day is not only a day of bringing my head down and crying. I do that 24/7, but thinking what is Israeli and Jewish people around the world, what could we do to stop this crazy thing happening? And I'll just share my story. And as Ricky, I think, said, it's so different mourning and living with a girl that's been murdered when she's 13 and a half. She's not a soldier or, she doesn't have a story of being brave and taking a tank and in the war of Israel, stopping the enemy. She doesn't have any story. She has a story of being murdered in bed. And there's no brave thing around it. And it keeps us thinking always, how could we keep a memory alive and not become bitter people, but better people? Because becoming bitter puts you down in this dark hole that it's so hard to come out. Becoming better people lets you rise up. I want to start, I hope I could do it. I want to start with a short song that shows who Hallel was and gives a bit of a feeling. I hope I'll go on screen and then I'll say a few words. So let me, okay, so you have to make me, please, Ricky, make me the host or co-host so I could show the movie, the clip, please. And then we could continue. Okay, I just need to be co-host right now.
Okay, one minute.
Okay, while,
Can I pick you up? Dunkin' on the way back?
I have a big coffee. I have my coffee.
try to mute yourself while Judy's doing it. Could you manage? Okay, so I'll start speaking, Judy, and as soon as you make me co-host, tell me, and then I could show the short thing we have. As Judy said, Hallel was murdered close to 5 years ago. She would be now 18 and a half. All her friends finished high school and serving in the country, most of them doing national service. And I guess this is what Hallel would be. But for us, she's 13 and a half forever. And one of the questions we've been asked is, how do you keep on surviving, and not only surviving, but living and believing and having faith in God and having faith in the Jewish world, and not only that, living where we are. Now, we live in the very outskirts of Kiryat Arba Hebron. Beyond us are the vineyards of my husband. My husband makes wine and grows the grapes as a belief that part of the things that Jews have to do coming back to Israel is living in the land and making the land alive again. So we grow grapes, and beyond the grapes, the vineyard is a fence. And beyond the fence, there are Arabs. So a lot of people ask us, why do we stay and live where we are? And how do we stay and, become believers? And I think we understood something very, very important, that for us, since the murder of Hallel, being a Jew and being a faithful Jew is not only, it's not easy, and it's always living in some kind of incredible combination of sadness and happiness together. And it took us a very, very short while to understand that. While we were sitting Shiva, the same week Hallel was murdered, I woke up one morning and I told my husband, listen, you must say the bracha that Jewish people say when somebody was saved, the bracha that's called Hagomel. And my husband says to me, what, why, how? And we started to see what happened, and we saw we had a great tragedy and a great miracle at the same thing. Now, what exactly happened? An Arab terrorist of the age of 17 jumped over the fence, ran over in the wilds of the vineyards, jumped into our house, our isolated house. Hallel was the only one in bed, stabbed it to death, and stayed in the house. My husband, Amichai, is part of a troop of civilians that protect the Jewish settlements and work with the army. So when my husband heard that something is happening in the area, no one knew what happened, he ran home with 2 additional warriors. One of them is by the name of Shuki and one by the name of Hanoch. The 3 guys enter the house, and Amichai runs to Hallel's bedroom, sees what he saw, and started screaming, and my husband never screams. The Arab terrorist that was waiting inside wanted to come out and stab him to death. But that same second, the second guy heard the screaming, came in, shot the terrorist, and saved my husband. So the first great miracle was that my husband was saved, and it's not something just to ignore. The second big miracle was the terrorist was dead. Now, I'm part of a foundation called Families Like Us, called Choosing Life, and we try to fight for all kinds of legal things around the terrorist rights, because there's crazy things that happens now in Israel. Terrorists are being paid and they have special rights, and the Palestinian government gives them a salary. And my friends have terrorists that are alive and make a joke and laugh at the families, and it's really, really horrible. So for us, the fact that the terrorists died means so much. That's a second miracle. The third very important miracle was that Hallel was not, did not suffer. Everything was very, very fast. She was asleep, she was in bed. And we know the terrorists could act in different ways. And the fourth miracle, maybe it's the biggest. I have two younger daughters, Shira and Kana. Now they're 13 and 9. 5 years ago, they were younger. And it was the last day of elementary school, the 30th of June. So I sent them to school to get report cards. And Hallel was the only one to be sleeping. If this whole thing would be a day after, my three daughters would be sleeping in the same room. And Israel has known double and triple tragedies where a terrorist comes and murders not only one, but 2 and 3 and more members of the same family. So the fact that Shira and Kana, my daughters, are saved for us means a lot. And I think since then we're living in a double crazy emotional combination that says being a Jew and being a Jew in Israel and being a Jew that has faith is always holding this combination of being sad and being happy at the same time. And sad is not bitter. Okay, again, we cry a lot, but sad is not angry, bitter, or the feeling of guilt and having all these bad emotions that keep you down. Keeping these two emotions means I'm holding the sorrow, but I'm holding also and acknowledging the fact that I have something left. And we felt it very strongly after the 30 days that Hallel was murdered. So the third guy that I told you, 2 other guys came with my husband. The third guy was injured in the battle and lost an eye. His name is Shuki. And after 30 days that Hallel was murdered, Shuki comes with his wife, with Hanoch, the guy that saved my husband, and his wife. And I'm standing with my husband, Amichai, and we're all 6 people standing in the same place where Hallel was murdered. And Shuki says, I want to invite you to a thank you meal, saying thank you to God that I'm survived. And I'm looking at my husband, and my husband is looking at me, and we're saying, how could we come to a party when Shuki was survived and Hallel is gone? But we said we're coming, and we came. And of course, it wasn't a happy thing. It was very emotional. But the 3 warriors and soldiers stood up in the middle and started saying a psalms of Tehillim, Nishmat Kol Chai. And they were crying and saying thank you and crying and saying thank you. And we understood that this is our secret of being Jewish. And I feel this year is even harder because just yesterday was the Jewish beginning of the month, Rosh Chodesh, and we said Hallel, the special prayer we do say. And tonight, today is the Jewish Memorial Day, but just tonight, we're going from sadness to happiness, and we're going to celebrate the Jewish Independence Day. And everything is so combined and so emotional and so dramatic, but I guess this is it. Okay, it's not forgetting each side, it's living with both. And again, not being bitter and being better. We have a strong, could I share the film, Judy, or still not? Tell me, okay, because I really want to.
Yes, you're co-host now. Mhm.
I want to try sharing the thing and then I'll continue. Yeah, I see I could. Okay, I'll just put on the sound and let me see that it's going to work. Wait, what happened? Oops, wait, it's gone. Oops. I had it a moment ago and it was gone. Sorry, it's here, but how come I don't? Wait a second. Okay, I don't see it for some reason. I see it, but you can't. Okay, we'll work on it soon. I'll continue.
Rena, when you share your screen, just
Mhm.
choose the video. You can try it one more time. Just choose the video, click it, and then
Yeah, it's here, but for some reason it doesn't go on like I see it. I'll try it once more, and if not, we'll just continue, okay? Because I see it, and for some reason, let's try one last time. Okay, I'll show you. I'll show you something else. I want to show you something different, but I'll show you just to get the feeling who's Hallel.
ימים לילות לוחש אליך אלוקיי, אבי שבמרומים קבל את תפילותיי. אנא שמור דרכיה, הגשם חלומותיה, ותן ברכה במעשה ידיה. אנא שמור דרכיה, הגשם חלומותיה, ותן ברכה במעשה ידיה. לכל אשר תלכי, תלכי תמיד בדרך, זכרי שלעולם ישמור עלייך מלך. התוצר כל כך מושלם, הכי יקר שבעולם, עצמי את יופייך, המשיכי לחייך, ואלוקים יאיר את מזלך. זרבדים אשזור הניח לראשך, שביל המחר עכשיו סלול כבר בדרכך, חומת מגן אהיה לך, תורת אמת אתן לך, אהיה כאן בשבילך באמונה.
Okay. Maybe I'll show you the second one later if I could find it. One of the question is like, again, how do we continue? You saw Hallel, a beautiful girl, never harmed anything, never did anything bad, just started life. And I think the hardest thing is to be a parent that lost a child. I think the hardest thing on the pyramid, if there is one, is losing your only child. And we know, I know people that lost their only child. Then the hardest thing is to lose a child that was never married and doesn't have children, because you're not only losing your own child, but you're losing their children and their grandchildren forever and ever. And for us, the parents that lost a child that wasn't married, and there's no future, and there's nothing to hug, I think it's not only one loss, but it's a loss of all and every future. And one of the biggest questions is, how do we keep Hallel's life, and how do we stay pure? Hallel means glory and light and shining. And I named her Hallel because she was born after Hanukkah, the holiday that the Jewish world lights 8 days candles, and the candles shine from darkness. And the feeling was, we can't become bitter people. We have to keep the light of Hallel. And one of the things was trying to find a way of bringing Hallel back to life in a different way. It's so complicated. It's something we're not used to. Okay, we're used to mourning. We're not used to giving a rebirth to our child. But then I think we found it in a couple ways. One way is my husband's way. My husband makes wine. I'm showing you here. It's a bit hard to see it. But after Hallel was murdered, he planted a new vineyard called Kerem Hallel, and to show our trust and faith in ourselves and in God and in the Jewish people, that we have roots and will stay in Israel. And his mother was a Holocaust survivor. And when she was close to Hallel's age, all her family was transported on death trains to the death camp of Treblinka. And she was the only one to survive with a great, great story. And when his name is Amichai, my nation is alive. When he came, he said, I'm having roots. I'm staying. My mother's a Holocaust survivor. My daughter is murdered by a different type of Nazi, but I still have faith. So when Amichai makes the Hallel wine, and when people come to us and drink it and make a bracha, it shows there's a bit of Hallel spirit that's alive. And for us, I had to find a way of doing it. So as Judy said, we wrote the Pirkei Hallel book, and we made cards, and we have tours and talks, especially for bat mitzvah girls and mothers, and bringing in the light and shining of Hallel and showing that we still could be full of life. And I want to share a small story that I learned from Hallel, because one of the hardest things is to take the will of Hallel, her deeds, and make it something that I could follow. And again, she was 13 and a half. It's not an old guy that died. It's not a warrior. It's not a rabbi. It's not, it's not anything that I could hold. It's a girl. And I want to share a small story that could just show who she was. Hallel was a dancer. And the night before she was murdered, she danced. And she came back home and she was very happy. And she spoke to us. That was the last conversation. And I told her, Hallel, you're such an amazing dancer, but how come you're always standing behind? Stand in front so we could see you. And she told me a sentence. She said, Ima, mother, this is my place and I'm happy with it. And I said, this is a will that I could hold and put in my blood vessels and say, I want to keep this will of Hallel. This is my place, and I'm happy that each one of us has a different place. And we'll never, never, never have and live like other people. We have to just learn to be happy with our place, and it's not always easy. And we could think of different kinds of examples. It's not always easy to say thank you, but Hallel taught me to say thank you. And another thing Hallel taught me was, and this is something that I usually tell children when I speak to young children, but I think it's a story for all and every age. When she was even younger than 13 and a half, when she was around 10, she used to learn in elementary school, and there were a few girls that were the queens of the class. And a result of it, one of the girls did not have any friends. And one day Hallel comes to me and says, Ima, I decided to be friends with this girl. So I said, there's so much energy in class. What are you going to do? And she said, nothing. I'll just smile and be a friend. Hallel had some kind of inner quiet and faith in her. And when she wanted something, she did it without too much noise. And she befriended with this girl. After Hallel died, the girl came to me. She just wrote a post yesterday and shared it. And she said, Rina, Hallel saved my life. And I said, what happened? I don't know all the things that are happening in school. And she told me in those words, I had such a bitter and bad time in school. But as soon as Hallel became my friend, everything changed. And now I'm happy. And she finished high school and she's serving her country. And she was a youth leader. She's an amazing, amazing, lovely person. And Hallel saved her life by her choosing to do a small, tiny, good deed, chesed. She changed somebody's life. And I feel it's a will, a very strong will that we have. And these special days that are very emotional and tight, and these days of the month of Iyar, the Holocaust Day, the Memorial Day, the Independence Day, are sitting on a lower level of the days of the counting of the Omer. And these days are also very, very hard because 24,000 people of Rabbi Akiva were killed. Rabbi Akiva, the great rabbi that we all know, had pupils and that died because they weren't peace one with another. And I feel when Hallel gave us the mission of looking into somebody's eyes and smiling and becoming better people, especially these days, it's something that we want to take and keep, and it's not always easy. Okay, so these are a few things that we learned, and I think it's every time it's looking again in these small stories and understanding and thinking again how to become better people. I want to say something else. As a Jew that has faith, I can't, in Hebrew it's better. In English it's harder to say. I spoke today to many groups in Hebrew, and I always say, I cannot say why. There's no why. Okay, I could say for what. In Hebrew, it sounds better. There's no lama, but there is lema. If I want to find a reason Why am I a mother that my oldest girl has been murdered when she did not do anything? There's no why. There's no reason. And if I'll ask, I'll bump myself into a brick wall and fall apart. If I find the question of what did God ask from me, and what is my duty, and what is my destiny and my challenge, and how could I be proactive and not only live a humble life of feeling that desperate and tight and closed? So they did not win. The Arab terrorists did not win. They want to kill us, and they want us to go away and move out of Kiryat Arba and move out of the outskirts where we live. And they want to make us maybe fearful and maybe angry and maybe sad. But when we know that there's some kind of meaning, I don't know what the meaning is. Again, I don't know God's ways, but there is a meaning. It means we could still be proactive and we win. And something very, very important I learned, that when you become proactive and be part of something and give, you're a winner. When you're passive, you're a loser, and it's so hard. I met a mother that lost a son, just like myself, and I called her up and said, "How are you?" And she said, "I'm laying flat in bed, and I can't do anything. I can't even get up to take a shower." And I told her, and I could tell it to her, and I told her, "Your mission now in life is to think that I'm putting my first foot on the floor, and I'm putting my second foot on the floor, and I'm standing up. And as soon as you're able to stand up, you're starting a different path. And if you're lying in bed, okay, not only your son is dead, but you're going to die too." So for us, understanding, and I think each one can join us and feel it, because everyone has a challenge in life of losing somebody beloved or having a very hard challenge that's so easy for us to become passive and fall apart. And when we feel, how could I be proactive? And how could I change myself to be a giver? So again, we won, and nobody is going to destroy us. And I think this is something very, very important. I want to say one more thing. A lot of people ask us, how do we stay where we live in the outskirts of Kiryat Arba? Aren't you afraid? A terrorist entered your house. Aren't you afraid it's going to happen again? And this is also part of Hallel's will. When Hallel, the night before she was murdered, I told you she was in a dancing performance, and she came back at night, and the bus stopped on the main road, and Hallel had to walk by herself through a dirt path to get to our house. And one of her friends said, "Hallel, aren't you afraid to walk at night?" And she said, "No, I'm going home." So for her, going home was the last word she said to a friend. And we understood that for us, staying home is keeping Hallel's will. And a couple of years ago, I was in the States, and I met an amazing guy called Yaakov Morgenstern. He lost his sister Nancy in 9/11, and he took me to memorial site, and he told me by his words, "I envy you that you have home for Hallel, that you're staying in the home, in the house of Hallel." Because for us, the people of 9/11, for so many years, there was no home, and there was nothing. Some of them didn't even have a cemetery or graveyard, but for us, we have home. So Hallel is by us. We built a small place called Kerem Hallel, Hallel's Vineyard, and people come, and group comes, and when people come and visit and see the place and see the land and see the fence, but see also, on one hand, the Arabs, but the second thing, the grapes growing, we see the future. And I think for us, it means so much, really, really a lot. I want to end with something, okay? I guess, let me just try. I guess I won't be able to show you the film I wanted. I want to show you a dancing thing, but for some reason I can't, but it's okay. One of the big things we do besides Kerem Hallel and the books and the Bat Mitzvah program is something that I feel is our destination. And I'm gonna may say things and not everybody agrees, but I guess it's our destiny and our challenge. I'm part of an amazing group of people, especially women, called Women for Beit HaMikdash. For 20 years, I'm part of this organization. And as soon as after Hallel died, we made this beautiful piece of art, this necklace that shows the Beit HaMikdash, the Jewish temple, surrounded with the Golden Gate. The Golden Gate is a gate we call the Gate of Hallel. It's known today officially, it's called the Mugrabim Gate, because in the state of Israel doesn't have enough courage to change the name. So anybody that goes by the official name wouldn't see it as the Mugrabim Gate, but us, we call it Hallel's Gate. And once a month, since Hallel was murdered for almost 5 years, we go up to Har HaBayit, the Temple Mount, purified and the way the Jewish halacha says, with a group of women, and we pray as we could. We can't so much because there's so many interesting laws, and we pray that one of these days, not only the Jewish temple will be built, but we'll be part of building it. And if we want to come to the Independence Day with a different level and a different zone after 73 years of being independent and almost 54 years by freeing Jerusalem, if we want to feel ourselves in a different spiritual level, we have to start with the holy, holy home of God that's missing. And that's working and making sure that the Jewish mountain, Har HaBayit, should be us, coming up, walking there, being able to pray what we cannot do today, coming up in any hour we want what we cannot do today, coming up as any which way we want where we cannot do today, showing that we, the Jews, came home. Right now, it's still very, very hard, and it's slowly, but we're working on it month after month, day after day. And this June, this Sivan, will be 5 years that Hallel is not with us. And my husband and I thought to do a large coming up to Har HaBayit, the Jewish mountain, and scream and cry to God that we need to be in a different place, and we're willing to work hard to achieve it. And this is our piece of jewelry that shows, Dafka, this day, I'm coming and talking to you from Kiryat Arba, the place where everything started, the city of patriarchs. But our future is knowing that Jerusalem has to be redeemed and has to change, and we, our generation, could do it. So you can always join us. You're always welcome to come and visit us in Kerem Hallel, or to meet us in the mountain of Har HaBayit. And we'll keep doing what we have to, full of life, because Hallel died, but her spirit is alive. So thank you. And if there's any questions, I'm here.
Thank you, Rena. We really appreciate you sharing that story. And we're only not going to Q&A because we do have more speakers in the program. And for those who are in the US, when in Israel, we go soon to Yom Ha'atzmaut, and we transition from this time of pain to a moment of optimism. And I think that's what Rena's story was. She shared a perspective that tells us what real Israeli chutzpah is. Real Israeli chutzpah, not the one that people think about in the negative sense, but is this optimism, this belief that no matter what happened in the past, we can build a future and we can do something better in the world. And thank you for sharing with us that version of Israeli chutzpah, which is the power to believe in tomorrow, the ability to see the world no matter how sad you are and with a different set of eyes. So with that, we wish you the best. And I'm going to hand over to my co-host, Sari Singer from Strength to Strength, who is a powerhouse herself. In fact, if you missed Sari's talk, we interviewed Sari last night because she's a bombing survivor. And she was in a bomb in Jerusalem almost 18 years ago. And this led her to start the organization Strength to Strength to give support to survivors and their families. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Sari.
Thanks, Jody. And Rena, I just want to say every time I hear you speak, it gives me such chizuk and such strength in everything I'm doing going forward. Thank you for sharing not only of yourself, but of Halal. To Arnold and to Cheryl, I was on even though I wasn't visible. And these are all dear friends of mine. We're all in this family that none of us asked to join. And the only thing that I can say is that thank God I have these amazing people in my life that give me such strength and such support. And Rena, I can't wait to see you in Israel on my next trip and give you a big hug. And I'm just thinking about you and your family today and always. I would like to talk about, just for a few minutes, introduce our speaker. Miriam Foltz will be speaking, and this for me is quite difficult because Miriam's husband, Ari Foltz, was stabbed in the back by a terrorist on September 16th, 2018, while he was walking through the parking lot of the shopping mall in the Gush Etzion Junction. And Ari was a good friend of mine, and we talked a lot about different things. In fact, on Yom HaZikaron, before I would speak at a school or something, usually early in the morning, my time, I would always be texting with Ari back and forth about things. And every time I'd be in Israel, he'd take me to visit soldiers and to feed them ice cream and visit with them. And this was the first person in my life that I knew before they were murdered in a terrorist attack. And it definitely hit me very hard. And that morning, I was up very early for some reason. I woke up at 3:30 in the morning. I couldn't sleep. And I was watching on Facebook this terrorist attack that was videotaped. And I didn't know at the time that it was Ari. And it was just shocking to watch, not knowing the person, but even harder once I knew who it was. And I kept scrambling to try and get information in Israel. Ari, I watched him in the video chase the terrorist after he was stabbed himself, wounding him in order to save other people's lives. And that was the essence of what Ari Foltz, who he was. He died as he lived. He died a true hero. He was a good friend. He was a role model to me, an inspiration. And I'm thinking about Miriam and their kids today, and Ari's brother Hillel, who's become a good friend, and all of the family members, his parents today and always. And so with that, I'd really like to introduce to you Miriam Foltz, who's going to share some words about Ari for you to get to know him a little bit better as the way we knew him.
And I'm here to speak to you about my husband Ari, Zechor Livracha, Hashem Yikom Damo. Ari's life was an inspiration, and he constantly tried to inspire others to teach them about Israel, about the Jewish people, about our courage and our greatness. I'd like to tell you a bit about who Ari was. My family moved to Israel when I was 9, and I met Ari when his family was in Israel for the year when we were both in 11th grade. In 1991, after high school, Ari came back to Israel. He went to yeshiva in the Old City, as this was the closest place to Har HaBayit, the Temple Mount. He notified his parents that he would not be returning to the United States and that he was staying in Israel. In August 1992, Ari drafted into the Golani Brigade of the IDF, serving as a lone soldier. It was there that he met Yehoshua Friedberg, another lone soldier from Canada, serving in the same unit. In March of 1993, Yehoshua was brutally kidnapped and killed by Arab terrorists, and Ari made it a mission to tell his story to spread the word. We are here and we are not afraid. Ari came from a long line of Zionists. Ari's great-grandfather from his father's side was a general in the German army. After the First World War, he was stripped of his uniform and all his medals just for being Jewish. 1938 was Kristallnacht. Ari's grandparents knew something was wrong and managed to get themselves on a boat and made it safely to the United States, but others were not as fortunate. Ari's grandmother from his mother's side was living in Budapest, Hungary. Her first husband was taken away and later killed by Hungarian border guards. Ari's grandmother was taken to Auschwitz and suffered terrible horrors, but somehow she survived. After the war, she went back to Budapest to find any surviving family members. She found a cousin whose wife and 2 children had been killed in the gas chambers, and he himself had been saved by Raoul Wallenberg, and they got married. When Ari was growing up, his grandmother would always tell him stories of bravery, tell him how lucky they were to be free and proud to be a Jew. From her one daughter, she now had 5 grandsons, which she said were each worth $1 million. At age 78, after her 3rd husband had passed, Ari's grandmother moved to Israel. When Ari was serving in the army, we would visit her in her tiny apartment in Netanya, where she was so proud to see him in his IDF uniform. Ari and I reconnected after high school when he came back to Israel for yeshiva, and we got married in 1994. A few years later, Ari realized that due to the fact that he served as a lone soldier in a voluntary program, he was exempt from miluim, from reserve army duty. Of course, this was unacceptable to Ari. He wrote letters and reached out to anyone he knew, including Chaver Knesset Rechavam Zevi, to help reinstate him into active army duty. In 2001, he got a summons to the Army Draft Office in Jerusalem to sign him up again. When he got there, the chayelet at the entrance was astonished. "You mean you want to come back to the army? Are you crazy?" And this was the perfect opportunity for Ari to sit with her and explain how amazing it is that we have our own country and our own army. And of course, why would he not want to serve as long as he still could? Ari had a 4th degree black belt in Torah Dojo Karate. He taught classes all over Jerusalem and Beit Shemesh. The first thing Ari taught was, if you're in trouble and you have a way to get away, run. But if you can't get away, then I will teach you to defend yourself. Ari was very interested in the spiritual aspect of karate, and he would always devote the month of Elul to teach his students meditation and proper kavanah in tefillah, how to focus during prayer. For 4 years prior to his murder, Ari worked to bring support to IDF soldiers. Whether it was food, snacks, clothing, or equipment, he devoted his time to let the soldiers know, no matter where you are, we and people all over the world support you. On September 16, 2018, 2 days before Yom Kippur, Ari was walking through a parking lot on his way to the supermarket. A 16-year-old Arab jumped out from between the cars and stabbed Ari in the back. The wound was lethal, but Ari, sensing danger to others, turned and started to chase his attacker, who was running towards the entrance of the mall with intent to wound and kill more. Ari managed to shoot and wound the terrorist, and only when he saw others holding the terrorist at gunpoint, he knew no one else was going to get hurt. Only then did he allow himself to fall and rest. Ari's wounds were too severe. The knife had sliced into his lung and severed his artery. He lost too much blood and he died on the way to the hospital. Ari's actions are a lesson to all of us. Ari died the way that he lived, fighting for justice and protecting his fellow man, fighting for truth and protecting Israel. I always like to use Ari's own words because no one can say it better than he can. In a speech to Yeshiva kids, Ari says, "Israel is not to be bargained with or to be played with. Never take Israel for granted, ever, ever, ever." On September 16, 2018, Ari was stabbed in the back by a 16-year-old Arab boy who knew nothing but hatred for Jews. He had no respect for his fellow human being. He knew nothing of the sanctity of life. Ari and I, living in Eretz Yisrael, raise our children to be proud Jews, proud defenders of our country and of our people in any way possible, to respect others, and most important, to know that life is sacred. Ari was very active online on social media, spreading the truth to anyone who was willing to listen. I always say, if you never met Ari, please search his videos online and get to know him. In one of Ari's posts, in response to a terrorist act of a stabbing of a young woman, Ari reaches out to people abroad and he says, "Our goal is simple, not allowing terrorism to win. Terrorism is not about killing people. It's about causing terror, causing fear." Ari goes on to demand, stand with your people, stand with Israel. Don't give up on us, don't give up on yourselves. Life goes on and we get stronger. Ari was a proud Jew, proud of his people and proud of his country. Ari never apologized for who we are, for what we are. That is Tzionut Amitit, true Zionism. Just 80 years ago, Ari's family was being persecuted in Hungary and in Germany for being Jews. And now look where we are. 300 years ago, the dream of Zionism was dreamt from the outside, but now we have our own Jewish state and it belongs to us. The future of the Jewish people is Israel. Ari believed that every Jew, no matter where in the world, should know and appreciate their Jewish heritage and history. When you pick up and read the Tanakh, our Bible, and you come to Israel and walk in the footsteps of your forefathers and the prophets, that's the future of Am Yisrael. On his 45th birthday, Ari's mother asked him, "Ari, haven't you had enough? how long are you going to keep serving in the army? And his reply to her was simple, Ima, until I take my last breath. Ari served in the Israeli Defense Forces until the day he died, and he wore his uniform with pride. Ari knew what it meant to fight for something you believe in, to defend a country you love, to protect your people and your nation. Ari spread the truth on many social media platforms. He was equipped with all the facts. Ari knew that he was right. He just needed and wanted to make others understand and see it too.
And I want to pray also for the people in Israel to be safe. And I want to ask Kadosh Baruch Hu, I want to ask God to please give us the strength and courage to make the right decisions and to be able to eradicate those who want to destroy us. And remember one thing, we're not living in fear. We are not living in fear. Those days are over, around 80 years ago. So I'm a very proud Israeli Jewish person, very proud. And those creeps, terrorists, will not instill in me fear. Signing off, Ari Fold. Take care. God bless everyone.
Ari and I have 4 beautiful children. We raised them to be good people, good Jews, loving and living in Eretz Israel. That is Ari's true legacy, and it lives on through them. Today, Israel celebrates Yom Hazikaron, remembering the fallen. Tomorrow, we celebrate Yom Ha'atzmaut, Israel Independence Day. There is a reason why these 2 days come one after the other, for without the lives of brave, proud people, we would not have our independence. On this day, Yom HaZikaron, we remember 23,928 fallen soldiers, men, women, and children. Because of them, we are here. Because of them, we can live, Am Chofshi B'Artzeinu, as a free people, a free nation in our land. This land is ours. Yehi Zichram Baruch. The Ari Fold Project, our nonprofit organization, was established to continue the mission Ari began and never gave up trying to complete, even with his dying breath, to defend Israel and the Jewish people, to help IDF soldiers, and to teach others about the beauty and depths of Judaism and Israel. Please visit arifold.org for information on ongoing projects, donations, and how you can help keep Ari's legacy alive. Thank you.
Thank you to Miriam for sharing this story. And I feel like Ari was so on social media and his family that we all know Ari through Facebook, social media. And I'll just say that a personal story, the day that Ari was murdered happened to be a bar mitzvah in the community where Ari was from Efrat. And I was like, oh my gosh, how is this bar mitzvah going to be? Many of the guests there were personal friends of his, went to shul with him, and I couldn't possibly imagine what this experience would be. And then we went to this bar mitzvah and everybody was dancing like there was no tomorrow. And they said, this is what Ari would have wanted. And that is what Ari would have wanted. He would have wanted us to not let the terrorists win and to show that we Jews will always, always be survivors. I also am friends with Hillel, like probably thousands and thousands of others, Ari's brother, but he constantly gives updates. And I feel like I know Ari and I know how strong Miriam is and how wonderful their children are. And I hope you guys please keep inspiring us all to all be strong and take a stand for Israel. With that, I'm just going to remind everyone the program is recorded. Please share it. It's not the end of the program. We are going next to the Lone Soldier Center, and from there we're going to have Hatikva. And again, I want to say thank you to all our sponsors and partners who helped us make this event possible and helped us reach thousands and thousands of Jews all over the world. And with that, I just want to also, so we had, just by the way, 24 sponsors, plus, Strength to Strength JIC, and we had over 180,000 people Facebook reach just between our sponsors of organizations from all over the world. I also want to mention to everyone that, or not mention, I also want to tell people about the Lone Soldier Center. Maybe you may not be familiar what a lone soldier is, but lone soldiers are soldiers who come to Israel without their families to serve in the IDF purely for idealistic reasons. Or sometimes they're kids from troubled homes, or sometimes they're kids from religious homes where their parents don't agree with the ideology of serving in the army. And the Lone Soldier Center provide them a lifeline to give them a sense of community, to support them, a home, and everything, including warm meals. My community participates monthly in making meals for a center. I've many times hosted the Lone Soldiers in my home for meals. And it really is an experience to see these young people who come to serve in Israel, often putting their lives at risk. And I sometimes think about kids in the US at the same age who are in college and worrying about what brand of beer and which party. And here kids have chosen to pick up a gun and come support the Jewish people and defend the state of Israel. And we thank you for your service. And with that, Lizzie from the Michael Levine Lone Soldier Center. After that, we'll go straight into Hatikva. And in Israel, we will be transitioning to Yom Ha'atzmaut and celebrating the state of Israel. Thank you. Lizzie.
Hi. So just to correct you, sorry, we're not the Lone Soldier Center. We're the Michael Levine base. We're a new nonprofit. We were established about a year ago. Professionals and volunteers who many years of experience with lone soldiers. We felt there was a gap with what lone soldiers were being provided for, as well as we provide for lone banot shirut, because until now there was nobody taking care of them, and they have some of the very similar needs as young people who come here and serve the country, in hospitals and all over the place. We had the support of Michael Levine's parents. They heard that we were starting something new. They gave us the blessing to use his name because this is what Michael was all about, helping people and continuing his dream, and adding the Banot Shirut was something new to add to that. The Michael Levine base is right by the shuk. It's very important. That's where the soldiers and the Banot Shirut, that's where they go. That's where they do their shopping. It's very near to the Tachana Markazit. So when the soldiers are on their way back to base or on their way home from base, we're very conveniently for them. We provide them meals, a place to come, a place to meet one another, a place to get support when they are having trouble in the army. They want to move to a different unit. They don't know how to. The same with the girls. Before they start their service, they have lots of questions. They don't know exactly where they should go when they finish their service. We've been providing until now. We just started just before the corona. So we weren't able to do big events. So we were doing takeaway meals. So we were providing on average once every 2 weeks, over 100 kids were coming to us to take away meals for Shabbat and Chagim. On Pesach, we had about 160 kids came and took massive Pesach packages, which would give them enough for the whole week, including everything for the Seder, meals, all their dry goods that they needed. You know, these kids are here, some of them for the first time making Pesach by themselves. So we really did as much as we could to help them. We're there for them to come to meet with advisors. We have washing machines and dryers that they can use. And now that the corona seems to be leaving us, we hope we're going to be able to start doing Shabbat meals. Yesterday we had a JIC Yom Hazikaron with Michael's friends, and Michael's parents attended. We also have a mental health therapist who volunteers for us, and she's there once a week for people to see. They can come and see her. Soldiers can see her off the record without going to the army and telling them just if they need someone, because the mental health is really important, especially with the corona year, for them to have somebody they can come and talk to. And another thing we do is the post-service, when they finish the army or they finish their service and they don't know whether they want to go back home, they want to study, or they're looking for a job, we have somebody who helps them. The video that you're about to see was actually made last year for Yom Hazikaron. It features Michael Oren, it features the Levines. We didn't want to mess with the footage. Some of it you'll see talks about this year's corona and we can't go out and we can't do things, but it's such an important, the footage is so important, and it's set out in a way that to start editing it would have made lose something. So I hope you enjoy it, and if anyone is interested in hearing more, help supporting us. We've only been around a year, and obviously we wouldn't still be here if there wasn't a need for another lone soldier, lone banot shirut non-profit organization. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Back to you, Jody.
אני יושב עכשיו קרוב אל השמיים, מנסה למצוא תשובות לשאלה, על הדרך גם חולץ הנעליים, חיילים עכשיו עוזבים את המרכבה, כן אני יושב שם חושב, קצת עלייך להכאיב מעט ללב, את המשפט הבא את בטח מכירה, יום יומיים אני בא בחזרה, נגמר, נגמר, נגמר. ובדרך כשיצאנו אל הבית, אז עצרנו בפלאפל בפינה, ואנשים שם הסתכלו מחאו כפיים, הגיבורים שלנו אמרו באהבה, ואני עומד שם מסתתר, קצת גדול עליי להיות זה ששומר, ובין ביס לביס עולה בי מחשבה, לעזאזל כמה גיבורים יש במדינה, נגמר, 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 נגמר.
Welcome to the virtual Tekes for Yom Hazikaron. My name is Richard Corman, and I serve as the chairman of the board for the Base for Lone Soldiers, a new Amuta that is making a difference in supporting lone soldiers and lone Benot Sherut who serve the state of Israel. As we all know, the coronavirus has turned the world upside down. This hafuch effect has made masks, social distancing, and a ban on group assembly the norm in April 2020. Unfortunately, this year, families will not be able to visit the graves of their loved ones, nor will they be able to attend the traditional Yom HaZikaron Tekes that is held in every Israeli community. So as the physical siren is sounded to inaugurate this Memorial Day, we will be a nation that is connected emotionally and spiritually as we stand in front of our home or on our mirpeset. Therefore, it is vital that the Base for Lone Soldiers provides an online opportunity to show our respect and reverence for those who gave their lives so that we can continue to celebrate the many blessings that Israel has to offer. This meaningful and inspirational online Tekes enables us to remember those courageous and devoted men and women who gave their lives to defend Eretz Yisrael. For many Israelis, Yom HaZikaron is a time of incredible pain and loss. This year, it is even more challenging due to the lack of tangible participation in those rituals that provide comfort and a sense of remembrance. May the memories of those soldiers who fell in battle, as well as those citizens who were victims of terror, provide us with the inspiration and the light to illuminate a bright future for the Jewish people in our country, Eretz Yisrael. Please join me now in standing for 2 minutes of silence.
ביום סיום המנדט הבריטי על ארץ ישראל. מתוקף זכותנו הטבעית וההיסטורית ועל יסוד החלטת עצרת האומות המאוחדות אנו מכריזים בזאת על הקמת מדינה יהודית בארץ ישראל, היא מדינת ישראל. מתוך ביטחון בצור ישראל, הננו חותמים בחתימת ידינו לעדות על הכרזה זו.
After the devastation of the Holocaust, the Jewish people were in need of a home to call their own. On May 14th, 1948, following Ben-Gurion's declaration of the State of Israel, the surrounding Arab nations attacked Syria, Egypt, Jordan, and Lebanon. Between 3,500 to 4,000 Israeli soldiers fell fighting for their newly founded state. Many of these were the original lone soldiers, as they came from all over the world to defend their new infant nation. In late October of 1956, in order to put an end to terrorist entrances into the State of Israel and remove the Egyptian blockade of Eilat, Israel invaded the Sinai Peninsula. This mission was also vital to protect the use of the port into the Mediterranean Sea, known as the Suez Canal. During this operation, Mivtza Kadesh, 172 IDF soldiers lost their lives. Between June 5th and June 10th of 1967, Israel fought against three of its enemies, Egypt, Jordan, and Syria. In just 6 days after being attacked on all fronts, Israel seized control of the Gaza Strip in the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, the West Bank, including East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria, protecting Israel from future attacks. 779 Israeli soldiers lost their lives. On the 6th of October, 1973, Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year for the Jewish people. While praying at synagogues and fasting, Israel was launched into full-fledged war. The fighting took place in the Sinai and the Golan Heights. The war led to Israel eventually returning the Sinai to Egypt, but retaining control of the Golan. There were heavy losses. 2,656 IDF soldiers fell in battle. In the beginning of June of 1982, Israel launched the First Lebanon War. After repeated attacks on northern Israel by the Palestinian Liberation Authority, Israel could no longer stay quiet. Eventually, however, Israel withdrew from southern Lebanon. 666 soldiers lost their lives in this war. On July 12, 2006, following an attack by Hezbollah, where 2 Israeli soldiers were killed and abducted, Israel launched what today is known as the Second Lebanon War. The war ended on August 14, 2006. 121 Israeli soldiers fell fighting, including lone soldier Michael Levine. After months of rocket attacks during 2012 on Israel by Hamas, Israel launched Operation Pillar of Defense. After days of negotiations between Hamas and Israel, a ceasefire mediated by Egypt was announced on November 21st. 2 Israeli soldiers lost their lives. On July 8, 2014, Israel launched a military operation in the Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip. Following the kidnapping and murder of 3 Israeli teenagers, Gilad, Naftali, and Eyal, by Hamas members. The operation also aimed at finding and destroying tunnels that were built by Hamas operatives to use to attack Israeli citizens. The operation ended on August 26th. 68 Israeli soldiers lost their lives.
On this, as on every Yom Hazikaron, we remember the many thousands of Israelis, men and women, soldiers and civilians, who have given their lives so that we can be, as we sing in Hatikva, Am Chofshi Ba'altzeinu. And for the more than 7,500 lone soldiers who have come from around the world to serve in the IDF, this is an especially poignant day. Today we remember the lone soldiers who fell in the line of duty, from Max Steinberg and Alex Singer to Sean Carmelli and so many others who made the ultimate sacrifice so we can be Am Chofshi Ba'altzeinu. More than 40 years ago, I was a lone soldier, and I know what it is to be without your family here, to be without support, sometimes even to be without clothing and food. Fortunately, today, we have the base which can provide these vital services to lone soldiers and to their families. On this Yom HaZikaron, and on every day, let's salute our lone soldiers and support the base for what they do for our soldiers from abroad. Shalom.
Max Steinberg, son of Evie and Stuart Steinberg, was born in Los Angeles in September 1989. In 2012, Max made Aliyah, where he joined the IDF and served as a fighter in the Golani Brigade. Max fell in battle on the 22nd of Tammuz, 5769. He was laid to rest in the military cemetery on Mount Herzl. He was just 24 years old. Yehi Zichro Baruch. Alex Sasaki was born in 1991 in the United States to Shelley and Stephen. He made Aliyah in 2006 and joined the IDF in December of 2017, serving in the Golani Brigade. Alex died during his service on the 25th of March 2019. He was laid to rest in the military cemetery on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. He was 27 yehi old. Yeh Zichro Baruch. David Gordon was born in the United States on the 11th of May 1993, son of Ruth and Jacob Gordon. In 2013, David Menachem made Aliyah, and 3 months later, on August 13th, he enlisted into the IDF as a fighter in the Givati Brigade. David fell during his service on the 19th of August 2014. He was laid to rest in the military cemetery on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. He was 21 years old. Yeh Zichro Baruch. Alex Singer, son of Suzanne and the late Max Singer, was born in White Plains, New York on September 15th, 1962. Alex made Aliyah to Israel on the last day of 1984, where 6 weeks later he drafted into the IDF Paratroopers Division. On his 25th birthday, he and 11 other men were dropped by helicopter into the Hermon region 1 mile into Lebanon. They were unexpectedly attacked by a group of 30 terrorists, where Alex, most of his men, and his officers lost their lives. Alex was buried on September 18th, 1987, in the military cemetery on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. He was 25 years old. Yeh Zichro Baruch. Daniel Haas, the son of Shoshana and Meir, was born on December 29th, 1955, in Cleveland. He made Aliyah in 1979, and in 1980, he joined the Nachal unit in the IDF. When the First Lebanon War broke out, Daniel pleaded with his commanders to let him be drafted for reserve duty. On July 21st of 1982, Daniel led his unit on a patrol near the village of Mansoura in Lebanon. He encountered a terrorist ambush, stormed the enemy, and was sadly killed in the exchange of fire. Daniel was laid to rest in the military cemetery of Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. He was 27 years old. Yeh Zichro Baruch. Abraham Grogan, the son of Pearl and George Cohen, was born on September 11th, 1959, in Phoenix, Arizona. He made Aliyah in 1980 and enlisted into the Golani unit. On August 4th, 1982, his company was fighting in the south of Beirut. Avi was trying to rescue his fellow wounded soldiers and himself was mortally wounded. He continued to fight and to help his fellow soldiers until he succumbed to his own wounds. He was laid to rest on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. He was 23 years old. Yeh Zichro Baruch. Michael Levine, the son of Harriet and Mark Levine, was born February 17, 1984, in Pennsylvania. Michael made Aliyah at the age of 19 in 2003. In August of 2004, he enlisted into the IDF Paratroopers Brigade. First Sergeant Michael Levine was at home during the breakout of the Second Lebanon War, and upon hearing the news, flew back immediately to go into battle. He fell in battle in the south of Lebanon on the 1st of August 2006. He was laid to rest at the military cemetery on Mount Herzl in Jerusalem. He was 22 years old. Yeh Zichro Baruch.
Ana bechor, גדולת ימינך, תגדיר צרועה, קבל רינה, עמך סגדנו, תארנו נורא. אנא בכוח גדולת ימינך, תתיר רוחה. קבל רינת עמך, סגדנו תארנו נורא. לגיבור ראשי חוקך, כבבת שערים, רחם תארם, רחמי צדקתך. דמי גמלם, חסין קדוש, חסין קדוש ברוב טובך, נאה לעבדיך. יחיד גאה למכפר, זוכה קדושתך. שרתנו גבר, ושמע צעקתנו, יודע תעלמו. אנא בכור, גדולת ימינך, תגדיר צרועה, קבל רינת, עמך סגדנו, תארנו נורא. שרתנו גבר, ושמע צעקתנו, יודע תעלמו. אנא בכור, גדולת ימינך, תתיר צרועה.
On Yom Hazikaron, we not only commemorate the fallen soldiers from war and terror, but we too commemorate the fallen innocent victims of terror attacks. These innocent civilians were just trying to live their lives as they have done so many days and years before. May their memories forever be a blessing.
Hi, my name is Norman Blousting, and before I get started, I want to wish everyone to be healthy and safe during this terrible time that the world is experiencing. In 2000, I came to Israel with my late wife and my youngest daughter. Fast forward to 2001, May 29th of 2001, we were driving to Jerusalem so we could give tzedakah and I could daven mincha before going to America. And on the road, we were shot at where 2 people were murdered, including my late wife. 4 people were injured, including myself. The next morning, both my youngest daughter and I made a decision to stay in Israel, to do chesed, and to help the country. For the past 19 years, I've been working with the Israeli army and children at risk, and I work with them 24/7. My youngest daughter, she works as a physical therapist in Jerusalem, helping people. We both feel it's very important to live here and to be part of this country. Thank you.
מי שברך אבותינו, אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל, הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה העומדים על משמר ארצנו וערי אלוהינו, מן הלבנון ועד מדבר מצרים, ומן הים הגדול עד לבוא הערבה, ביבשה באוויר ובים, הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל. ייתן אדוני את אויבינו הקמים עלינו ניגפים לפניהם. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מכל צרה וצוקה ומכל נגע ומחלה, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם. ידבר שונאינו תחתיהם, ויעטרם בכתר ישועה ובעטרת ניצחון, ויקוים בהם הכתוב, כי אדוני אלוהיכם ההולך עמכם להילחם לכם עם אויביכם להושיע אתכם ונאמר
תפילת אל מלא רחמים, מפי החזן הראשי לצה"ל, סגן אלוף שי אברמסון.
אל מלא רחמים שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה על כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים טהורים וגיבורים כזוהר הרקיע, מאירים ומזהירים לנשמות חללי מערכות ישראל שנפלו במלחמות ישראל, בפעולות הגנה, תגמול וביטחון, בעת מילוי תפקידם ובעת שירותם, ושחרפו נפשם למות על קדושת השם ובעזרת אלוהי מערכות ישראל הביאו לתקומת האומה והמדינה ולגאולת הארץ ועיר האלוהים, ולכל מי שנרצחו בארץ ומחוצה לה בידי המרצחים מארגוני הטרור, ברור שאנו מתפללים לעילוי נשמותיהם בגן עדן תהא מנוחתם. לכן בעל הרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמותיהם. אדוני הוא נחלתם וינוחו בשלום על משכבותם ויעמדו לגורלם לקץ הימים. ונאמר
Shalom, Mark and Harry Levin here. We are the proud parents of Michael Levin, the lone soldier who was killed in the Second Lebanon War in the summer of 2006. We're coming to you on the eve of Yom Hazikaron, here from Philadelphia. We are in quarantine. We are in lockdown because of the coronavirus, and our trip to Israel was obviously canceled. So we feel very out of sorts because for the first time since 2006, we are not standing proudly by our son's kevar in Har Herzl in Jerusalem.
We want to say that our hearts go out to all the parents of soldiers who gave their lives, to all the victims of terror, and our hearts are with you, and we truly wish we could be there with everyone. This day is not about Michael, it's about everyone who gave their life.
As you know, over 72 years of Israel's existence, over 23,000 people have fallen in defense of the nation. And we don't consider our son any more of a hero than the other people that gave their lives in defense of Israel. But Michael is our hero because he was a passionate Zionist. He loved Israel and he wanted to spend his life there. He made Aliyah as a young boy and served in the paratroop brigade, 890 San Chanim. He was a sergeant, and he was home on leave in the summer of 2006 when the war broke out, and rushed back to join his unit. He was told upon arrival that his unit was just briefed and transferred north, and he was supposed to stay in Hebron for guard duty. And Michael said, I didn't join the IDF, and I didn't come to Israel for guard duty. He says, I want to know where my unit is, and I want to join them. And they wouldn't tell him. Long story short, after making dozens of calls, he finally found out where they were. He rushed up to join the unit just prior to their entrance into Lebanon, and he was told that he didn't have permission to do that. And Michael was a very, very determined young man, and argued and fought until his commanding officer just gave in. And Michael joined his unit when they went into Lebanon.
This is the first this is only the second Yom Hazikaron that I have not been in Israel. And the first one was extremely hard, not being with people who have gone through what we have, who understand why Michael sacrificed his life. And I have a feeling this one's not going to be any easier.
We'd also like to say that for us, we'll end this broadcast by saying that even though we can't physically be next to our son's kevar and stand there, that we proudly stand in solidarity with all of our fellow Jews in Israel whose friends or family gave up their life in defense of the nation. And for us, we'll end this by saying the same thing we did last week at our Passover Seder. For Harry and I, it'll be next year in Jerusalem. Thank you.
Kadima
Thank you all for joining. That will conclude our Yom HaZikaron program for 2021. Thank you so much.